So this is going to be the start of a new series on my channel where every week I bring you a new video going over some kind of tip that you can apply to your own photography. All of the videos will be for beginner photographers and some for experienced photographers as well. So I figured what better way to start this series than with the basics, what photography is at its core. I'm talking about the exposure triangle. It's something most of us have heard about and many experienced photographers will understand, but not everyone knows how to utilize it properly. I know I certainly didn't when I was starting out. So I want to share with you guys my approach to properly exposing an image, but before we do that, let's go over what the exposure triangle actually is. So the reason it's called the exposure triangle is because there are three main settings that control the exposure of your image: aperture, shutter speed, and your ISO. So the aperture controls how much light is hitting your sensor, the shutter speed controls how long that light is hitting your sensor, and the ISO controls how sensitive your sensor is to that light. Find the balance between all three and you have a well-exposed image. So your aperture is the only one that is determined by the lens that you are using, controlling the amount of light hitting your sensor. The lower the number on your lens means the larger the aperture, meaning more light and a shallower depth of field, aka more background blur, also known as bokeh. Next up is your shutter speed. It simply means how long your sensor is being exposed and capturing light. So the longer the shutter speed, the more light, which means it's easier to take photos at night, among other various things. The general rule for how fast your shutter speed should be is double the focal length of your lens. So this lens is a 50mm lens, so my shutter speed should be at least 1/100th of a second. Reason being that any kind of movement, even you just simply holding your camera and taking a photo, could introduce some kind of motion blur and you won't get a sharp image. And if you have a car moving or someone walking through your frame, you generally want the fastest shutter speed that you can possibly have. I like to stick to at least 1/125th of a second. Last is your ISO, which I think is also the most commonly misunderstood. ISO controls your sensor's sensitivity to light. You normally want to keep your ISO as low as you possibly can, because the higher the ISO, the more pronounced the noise and ugly grain will be in your image. And it will lower your dynamic range, meaning the information and the details in your highlights and your shadows. Now, the biggest misunderstanding about ISO, at least on a digital sensor, is that higher ISOs add more noise to your photos. But in reality, that noise is there even at ISO 100. It's just with the higher ISOs, that noise becomes larger and much more noticeable. Understanding the exposure triangle is important, but if you don't know how to properly expose an image, then you're not going to get the most out of your camera. When I was still new to photography and I first switched from shooting an automatic to manual, I didn't know how to properly expose an image. I did not do the proper due diligence to understand metering and the histogram. So the goal of this video is if I can help just one person avoid the mistakes that I made, then I did my job. Now I am shooting with a Sony camera, but the settings we're about to go over should be present on most, if not all, cameras. Alright, now that I have my composition lined up, let's go over the things that you should be paying attention to when you're trying to properly expose an image. First one being your metering at the bottom where it says MM, and the other one on the right being your histogram. If you do not see the histogram, press up on the wheel until you do see it. With the lens I'm currently using, the lowest aperture I can go is f4, but for this photo, I'm going to set the aperture to f5.6. Typically, a lens's sharpest point is about 1 to 2 stops above the minimum aperture. And I have my ISO at 100. There's no reason to go above 100 right now since it is still fairly light outside. And that leaves us with one setting, the shutter speed. Now, here on the metering, it does say 0.0, which does typically mean that we have a properly exposed image. But if you ask me, it looks like the highlights here in the sky are still a little blown out. So you should not fully rely on your metering all of the time. If you look over here at your histogram, you see that white line over here on the right? That means we are overexposed in the highlights. What we want to do is to try and find a balanced exposure where we do not have anything pushing on the left or the right. So you'll see if we go all the way over here, we are now underexposing because we are pushing up all the way here on the right. So we want to try and find a exposure here in the middle, which to me looks to be about right there at 0.7 stops underexposed. And we can now take the photo. And the last tip that I'll leave you with is that rules are meant to be broken. because with creativity, there are no rules and no limits. I could have easily made this video 2 to 3 times longer, diving into the nuances behind aperture, shutter speed, and ISO, but I think I'll save that for later videos. In the meantime, I hope there was something that you could take away from this video that you can apply to your own photography. It was meant to be short and to the point, so if there's anything I missed or anything you would like to add, please leave a comment down below to help out your fellow photographers. Or if there's anything you would like to see me cover in future videos, please leave a comment down below. In the meantime, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe to help support the channel, and I hope I could inspire you guys to get out and take more photos. Go out and shoot.